Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. It's good to see you another night. Excuse me. So I see that some of you are coming over from where you were a little bit ago on YouTube. So I'm just going to jump in. I don't see any technical issues right now, which is really good. I am coughing like I have no tomorrow. So forgive me if I have to pause or take little breaks. But let me just go ahead and jump in. Okay, guys, as you go ahead and sign in. Excuse me. So, post separation abuse, I think that this conversation is going to be a little more relatable than maybe I thought and maybe you think. Post separation abuse isn't just something that happens if you're married to someone, if you're in a relationship with someone, if you've dated someone. Post separation abuse can happen in those relationships. So, we're going to mention that as well in passing. But post separation abuse can also happen within the family context. And as you consider going no contact, putting up a boundary, really making it known to your family members, maybe even somebody that you used to be married to or used to date or used to be connected to, whatever the relationship, you will find, I think, that post separation abuse is something that can happen. I'm going to break down what this actually is because most people consider post separation abuse as, I'm going to leave the relationship and they're going to come after me and make my life difficult. Yes, that's a part of it. But the other part of it is post separation abuse can actually also be, I've stopped texting and emailing you, whatever the relationship. I've stopped texting. I have stopped emailing you. I have stopped communicating with you on social media. I have reduced my contact with you. And you continue to look for small crevices that you can get through to harm me, to abuse me, to manipulate me, to minimize me. The list continues, right? And so this chat tonight is going to introduce to you a much broader concept of post-separation abuse. When I was going over some of the research today, I had a couple minutes this morning to just kind of like think and meditate and be calm. We rarely get that. So when I get that, I'm like, yes, thank you. So this morning I'm sitting and I'm thinking, I'm processing, and I'm thinking, let me look up post separation abuse one more time. Let me look at the research. I'm not going to Google this and try to get a generalized understanding of this for my audience. I definitely want to get into the meaty part of what this means. And as I'm looking at the National Institute of Health, I'm looking at the American Psychological Association, I'm looking at the American Counseling Association, I'm looking at Applied Behavior Science Association, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this definition of post-separation abuse is so limited. And I found maybe 2 research studies that focused on post-separation abuse within the family context. And that says a lot about the cracks in the system. We need way more information and research than we're getting when it comes to post-separation abuse. It's not just in regards to domestic violence. It's not just in regards to being in a relationship with someone who can't let you go. Post-separation abuse can happen in many areas of your life. In fact, post-separation abuse can actually happen if you have a boss. I'll give you this example. If you have a boss who doesn't seem to respect you and you have told him several times that you're being harassed on your job, you don't feel supported, or you feel like you're being manipulated or whatever. You went to your boss to complain about something and he didn't come through or she didn't come through to make sure that you felt better. So here's what may happen in this kind of context. You may say, you know what? I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. I can't do this anymore. Thank you for trying to help me. Good luck to everybody here. I'm out. If you are in a work situation with a psychopath boss, or maybe they're narcissistic, or maybe they just simply don't want to be flexible with you, they may launch a legal investigation into something that you did. They may gossip about you with other coworkers, right? Other people that work for him or her. This boss may also go so far as to ask around to figure out where you're working now. Oh, she's working down at Sam's Club now. Let me go over there and talk to the boss because we used to hang out for lunch a couple of years ago. Let me just get some information on her, right? It happens, guys. It does, and it's horrible. I've seen it. I've been in the position of observing this as a professional, and then I've also been in the position of having a client who has been harassed by a boss, just because they said adios amigos. So it can also lead to your boss also filing an ethics complaint against you. Let's say, for example, saying that you stole goods, or you were overpaid and didn't report it. So this is not just romantic relationship. I've walked away and now I'm being abused. That's part of it. But again, there's a family piece. There's a piece where you could be abused after you walk away from your boss as well. And this can even happen with a friendship as well. And let me throw this in here. There's some research that also highlights it can happen between neighbors. Can you believe that? It can happen between neighbors. You could live in a community for 15 years and know everybody and know their lives in and out, and something may go wrong. And you may say, you know what? I'm moving. I can't stay here anymore. I don't like the gossip. I don't like the toxicity. I'm out. Well, so you think, right? Because if you've been in a community so long where there's ties and communication and everybody knows everybody, and you decide to get out of that craziness, the individuals within the community can then start texting you, emailing you, calling you, going on social media, harassing you through those different channels. They can also do things like set you up, call the police on you unnecessarily. That happened to one of my good friends a couple of years ago. The police was called on her. She was moving. I'll give this to you because you may be able to relate to this. She was actually moving out of her rental. She had rented a home for several years, and management had changed so much that she's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And I remember, meeting my best friend for lunch, and she's like, Tamara, I just got to get out of there. I can't do it anymore. And I'm like, leave. You've already paid this month's rent. You have a little bit of time to move everything out. Just go ahead, move into your new place. And I'm giving her suggestions and advice. Well, let me tell you, post-separation abuse is 100% a thing, because she was so abused by not only her management, but also the maintenance people that had taken care of her home for so many years. And let's not forget the community. So she actually tried, she took my advice. She tried to move out, moved most of her things out, left a few things behind, went back the next day and locked her door. And her keys were literally on the counter, and she was in the window and she's looking, and she's like, I can see my keys on the counter, and I locked the door. And she's like, what do I do? And so I'm like, well, you're not going to get me arrested, so find somebody else to help you. But no, I'm just being silly. I says to her, well, you're gonna have to get in somehow. Did you leave her bedroom window open? Did you leave, and she's like, you know what, I can put my son through the window. I said, go ahead. Here you go. You ready, guys? The neighbor across the street was so upset with her for moving after 15 years of living there. She was jealous, angry, resentful. She was a woman who had dealt with years of domestic violence, and she saw my friend and she's like, oh, so you're getting a better life and I'm not? And that's really the way that I started to see that. Well, this neighbor, excuse me, guys, something's in my eye. This neighbor across the street, she dials 911. 911. And the police come and they question my friend and they question her son. And thank God they were nice enough. They actually kind of, used their body weight and broke the door in, and she can get our keys. And my best friend's an attorney, by the way. But it was so hard to understand. And for the neighborhood to know that she was an attorney. She's not going to do anything that's criminal. She locked herself out of her home. But the way that I started to conceptualize this is kind of like a post separation kind of abuse thing, where there's anger and animosity because you've decided to move on. There's, things going on in the neighborhood she was not okay with, and she vocalized that. And when she went to move out, it's like the whole community turned on her. That's one example of this concept. Now, let me start dropping some terms now that I've kind of given you a little bit of a peek into other areas of post-separation abuse. There is research that suggests within the family context, if you feel like you were being bullied and intimidated within your family dynamic, and you've decided to move to a certain place in your world, or you've moved on, or you've kind of jumped over some hurdles in your world and you want a better standard of living, and maybe you've gone no contact with family members, or you've put up a boundary, you may find, and this is backed up by research, that the whole post-separation abuse dynamic is truly about power and control. It's nothing else. It's power and control. Why? Because the tactics that are launched against you when you decide to take the next move in your life is often tactics and maneuvers that can really get you stuck. Being sued, that's one example. Being drugged through the court system unnecessarily, that's another thing that can happen. And I'm going to give you some information too on patterns. So stay tuned, because we're going to talk about patterns. We're going to talk about how this impacts you in a little bit. And I will get to the chat box because I see you guys chatting it up over there. There's also kind of like this reduced sense of autonomy and independence. Maybe you, again, have put up a boundary. You block that person's email, text messages, social media messages, whatever. And maybe you said, I'm going no contact, whatever the case may be. Again, it's rooted. Post-separation abuse is rooted in power and control. And so really what the abuser, and it could be a series of abusers within your family, okay? Really what they want is for you to feel a reduced sense of autonomy and independence. My mom used to give the analogy when she would talk to us about spiritual things. She says sometimes some people are so evil that it's like, it's almost like the minute you try to escape and get away, they kind of step on your foot. It's like you're not going anywhere, and you may feel like you're getting away and they just step on your foot, right? And it's like they're trying to make sure that you can't make the next step. And so really that's post-separation abuse in a nutshell. It's you're not getting away from me without a fight. And the family intimidation, the relationship abuse, the relationship dynamic, the cycle of abuse, all of that happen within that dynamic can still be maintained when you walk away, right? And that's the scary part. Post-separation abuse re-triggers dependency. Let's say, for example, you have a family member that you're trying to get away from. You want nothing to do with this family member, and they continue to abuse you and harm you and minimize you, and they're condescending and they're arrogant, and the list just goes on. So you've decided, I'm going to put up this boundary. I'm not going to let you do this to me anymore. Your time is up. So let's say that's your attitude and you're trying to get away. But you're not going to get too far, because that family dynamic that you are trying to escape from, and this is what toxic families go through all the time. It's this re-triggering of your dependency of them, because the more vulnerable you feel, the more needy you feel, the more afraid you feel, the less independent you're going to be. So their abuse tactics kind of re-triggers that dependency over time. They also use your emotions and their emotions against you. Their emotions against you could be just a barrage of verbal abuse attacks, right? They can go online and post things and make you look a certain way that you're not. They can spread rumors and falsities and lies against you that just isn't true, right? And so they kind of use, again, your emotions and their emotions against you. Your emotions that they can use against you would be fear, intimidation, feeling bullied, feeling harassed, And so they use that against you to kind of keep you beneath them. Again, their goal is to re-trigger your dependency. And sometimes, and this is sad because I've seen this amongst my clients, sometimes they'll get out of the abusive dynamic, and after so many attacks, they end up actually going back into that abusive situation because they're tired and they feel like they just can't get away. So might as well, I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to go along with you. And that makes me so mad because, sometimes I'm like, don't let them do this to you, and the other person is like, but I can't do it anymore. One last thing that I want to mention before I go to the chat box is basically this alienation and isolation dynamic that is also launched against you. And what I mean by that is they try to, oftentimes, abusive family members or the abusive partner, friend, boss, whoever it is, they often alienate you from everybody else. It's kind of like this ostracism, like you're going to be over there and we're all going to be over here. If they isolate you and alienate you, then you don't have anybody else to give feedback from. And if you're in a intimidating and emotionally draining dynamic, the last thing you need to be is alienated and isolated, because your mind may be so tired, your heart may be so tired, your soul may be so battered that you can't even make heads or tails of what's happening to you anymore. And so other people on the outside, however, can give you some insights. They can keep you strong. They can hold you accountable. They can give you some insights. But if you're alienated and isolated, you can't get that. So you're just going off of your own exhausted mentality and your exhausted heart and mind. And that can keep you stuck in this post-separation abuse cycle. Now, abusers who use abuse to continue to abuse you after you've put up a boundary, after you've gone no contact, after you've said, you know what, I'm done with you, the tactics that they use tends to be psychological, because that's how they win most of the time. They use your mind against you. So psychological. It can also be legal, right? Especially in divorce proceedings or adoption cases, or cases where custody has been shifted in a family, or if there's domestic violence, or if there's child abuse, right, or partner abuse, elderly abuse. The legal system can be used against you. You can also excuse me, guys, you can also be stuck in a dynamic where there's economic abuse. That's the word I was looking for. I was trying to go back in my mind. Economic abuse. And that's when the abuser says, you know what? I'm not going to let you get too far here because you can't afford to move out. You're dependent upon us financially. So you might as well stay with me, right? And when you're being abused, that's the mentality that the abuser, whoever it is, could be family, could be a spouse, whatever, that's the kind of mentality that they want you to have and to maintain. That mentality that you can't get away because economically and legally you can't do it. One last thing, guys, is what's called the mesosystem. It's called mesosystem abuse. And basically what that term means is the abuser knows how to interfere with your interactions with the microsystem. The microsystem would be what's a part of your personal world. So like your family and friends, your boss, your coworkers. An abuser who doesn't like the fact that you've put up a boundary and you've said, you know what, I'm done with you, or I'm going no contact. An abuser knows how to kind of get between your system, if you will, and navigate and use it against you. So let me give you an example before I go to the chat box. Let's say, for example, your dad is an abuser. Okay, he tried to make you think that he has tried over the years to make you think that you have absolutely no way of getting away from him. You're on disability, you can't move out of the house, you're not able to be very independent. He has told you over and over and over that you're dependent upon him. So he has kind of exhausted your ability to feel confident. So let's say you get up the nerve to move. You borrow some money, you find an apartment, you get up the nerve to move. You get out of that environment. What does your dad do? Well, he calls your landlord. she doesn't have a job. She was fired a couple weeks ago. So I don't know how you're going to get your rent. I figured I would just let you know that because, she's left me, high and dry when it comes to money. She's borrowed from me. She's stolen from me. Right. And so now he's interfering with your relationship with your landlord. Then, okay, you think that's bad. I've had clients who have gone through this where, okay, they're interfering with your landlord, but then they may also go and start talking to your boss because they know exactly where you work. And so this abusive person is using these systems against you, your landlord and your boss. And that system should not be available to the abuser, but they will use that. So we call it mesosystem abuse. It's scary, right? In tonight's live chat, I'm going to go to the chat box, but in tonight's live chat, I'm going to talk about patterns with you guys. I'm going to give you a little bit of the research and how this impacts you. This is ugly, right? I hate it. I hate it so much. All right. Tammy Nicely. So good to see you back. Thank you so much for that. So many people contacted me after last night's live chat. So I'm so glad it was helpful. Good to see you. I feel so violated. Oh my goodness. Hello and welcome. Thank you for the hearts. Glad to see you and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you before. Mark Taylor, too. And God is love. Good to see all of you. Too says, hi Tamara. This is Habaya from England. Habiba. Is it Habiba? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Welcome. Good to see you. And welcome from England. Oh my goodness. I want to go there so bad. She goes on to say, I wanted to know what do you think about being passive? Well, I can give you like some theories about that since we're talking about post-separation abuse, because most abusers, they look for passivity. That's how they manipulate you. That's how they get over on you. That's how they, gain control of your own life and use it against you. Now, I'm not quite sure what you mean by being passive, but I'll give you a little bit of a general idea. I think that passivity or being passive can sometimes be the result of a childhood where you were never heard, never validated, or, never, sorry guys, I'm trying to move my microphone around, never given ability to kind of share your thoughts and feelings. When you're passive, it can sometimes work against you. I don't think it's negative in and of itself, but it can work against you because if you need to stand up, if you need to talk to someone, if you need to just reach out to somebody, if you need to defend yourself or somebody else, how can you do that if the world kind of operates all around you because you're so passive? So there can be a positive side of passivity. My younger sibling is very passive at times. He's more quiet. He's more thoughtful. He's more, kind of confident within himself. And we can't push him to be any other way. He is just a passive person. But on the flip side of that, passivity can also lead to a lot of abuse. So you really have to determine, is this a positive thing? Is that, is it not? Is my passivity working against me is really what you should be asking yourself. That was a very broad question and my answer may have been very narrow, but I hope that's a little bit of help. Jill Alcock, hello and welcome back. So glad you can be with us again tonight. Juby Joe, good to see you. Welcome back. Free Lady, hello and welcome. Yes, it's alive. I usually have, oh God, I hit the wrong button. I'm so sorry if you guys saw that. I'm usually live every Friday and Saturday. I try to be available in a live way. I think that's so much more powerful, but welcome. Good to see you. Triple X. Hello. Blessings to you and welcome. Good to see you. Jill Alcock says, I'm dealing with post-separation coercive control abuse. Yeah, we're going to get into that in just a little bit. And I'm sorry to hear that you're dealing with that. You did mention that yesterday. Elizabeth, good to see you. Welcome back. Give it a think. Good to see you again. Give it a think. Says post-separation abuse happens when the cluster B begins to understand they are losing a primary source of supply. I experienced it 3 times in the past 8 years. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. That's a very succinct, good way to put it. Let me also throw in here with that definition that it's not just cluster B. Cluster B within the field of psychology, we cluster personality disorders, which is a little bit controversial, right? Because human beings are so interchangeable that you can't just say, you know what, you're cluster B. You know what, that's cluster C over there. Because a cluster B can sometimes have cluster C or cluster A personality traits. So let me just kind of go over this a little bit because this is important for this topic as well. Cluster B would be personality disorders that are erratic, emotional, manipulative, kind of highly exaggerated emotions, right? There's a lot of intense emotionality within cluster B personalities, you know. Those are your histrionic people, those people who go into these theatrical places when they don't get their way, or when they're hurt, or when they're crying or angry. Individuals in cluster B can also be very dramatic, and, they kind of catastrophize things, and they exaggerate everything, sometimes far beyond what it is. And they also feel and experience emotions way more intensely than other people. So cluster B, yes, give it a think. But let's also not forget that cluster A can also be a problem. That's the paranoid, highly anxious, very self-conscious group of people. And they have a very odd way that they kind of go throughout life. That's the schizoid, and the paranoid personality categories. So let me just, for the purposes of this live chat, say that cluster B, yes, but we don't want to just narrow it down to cluster B, because there are people who react in very exaggerated, abusive ways, and they aren't even in cluster B at all. So thank you for mentioning that, though. Give it a think. I appreciate that. That's helpful. Bossy Truthy 15, hello and welcome back. Good to see you. All right. I'm looking for more comments. Bear with me, guys. I'm a little tired tonight. Kendra Crippen, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome. I don't remember seeing you before. Kendra says, post-separation abuse is so insidious, and finding that there is even less support or abuse being held accountable is pretty defeating. Yes, it is. So post-separation abuse is insidious, and here's how. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how it's insidious. I once had a client. She was leaving her husband. They had been married, ready for this, for 30 years. And I thought they were the best couple I had ever seen. They just seemed like the most humble and beautiful couple. And I was surprised when, the wife came to me for therapy and said, I'm divorcing him. And I'm not divorcing him because he's had an affair. I'm not divorcing him because, he doesn't show me enough love and affection. I'm divorcing him because I'm bored. I'm not excited about us anymore. And so after multiple therapy sessions to try to keep them together, she finally, got the divorce that she wanted. But when he decided to move on, it was okay at the time that, she knew that he still loved her, right? Because he hasn't moved on. And so that gave her some internal sense of value, if you will. Oh, he still loves me, kind of thing, But once he started to move on, she started to become very abusive. Why? Because he's moving on. He, you wanted the divorce. He gave you the divorce. He's moved out. He's went on about his life, and he's engaged to somebody else. And she found out over social media. And sadly, she kind of just full pledge, 100%, no boundaries, jumped into high attack mode against the new fiance and against him. And the abuse was so insidious because he never saw it coming. He figured, she doesn't want me anymore because she's bored. And those were her words, I'm bored. She finally got the divorce she wanted, and she had been divorced from him for an entire year and a half. And now he's decided to move on and get engaged. And now all of a sudden there's this post-separation abuse. And so, excuse me, guys, she started to try to drag him through the legal system. She would hold things over his head and harass him on social media. And when he would come into sessions with me, because I was also his therapist, At the time, he would show me all these text messages, and it was so abusive what she was saying and threatening him with. But that's an example of that insidious post-separation abuse. It can pop up when you least expect it as well. Half the battle knowing is, hello and welcome back tonight. Good to see you, Phoenix and Moon Warrior Turtle, Healing Daily and Lore Fit, as well as Sun and Sunflowers. Hello, welcome. Good to see all of you. Okay, Randy L, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Randy L says, this is always where the community stalking campaigns commence. Well, I don't know about that, but let me just say, stalking is something that does happen with post-separation abuse, and it can happen with your family members. It can happen with your friends. It can happen with the previous spouse. It can happen with your boss or coworkers. Post-separation abuse, again, is insidious, and so you may not see it coming, and you may not even see that the person is stalking you online. They want to know any and everything that you're doing on social media. They could also be stalking you through talking to other people and getting personal information about you and using it against you, right? So stalking is something that is, extraordinarily weaponized in these particular relationships. Excuse me, Orlando, hello and welcome back tonight. Good to see you. Yvette, Terry, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Elizabeth says, that is one of my concerns. I'm not sure that after I moved, my neighbor won't stalk me anymore or harass my people. Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? It's hard to tell. Kay Razy, good to see you. Welcome back. Kay Razy says, this is an important issue. So many people go through it. Yes. And I like what Sun and Sunflower says here. She says it's shameful. Yes, it is. Francophile. I feel like I'm messing that up every time. Forgive me. Hello and welcome back tonight. Francophile or Francophile, I can't get that. Says, I went no contact since September, and my parent and sister showed up to my place using an excuse of a wellness check. This just gave me more motivation to distance myself. They will make you look bad. Yeah. That's a difficult one, because I don't want to say they did anything wrong. Maybe they really did want to do a wellness check, and they didn't want to call the police or didn't want to call a crisis line to do it. So they figured they would do it themselves. I don't know the dynamic, but yeah, sometimes that so-called wellness check can be very uncomfortable. Lord Fitz says, the crazy thing is that if you don't heal, you tend to attract similar patterns of energy. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. And that's scary, right? Charisma's Healing Journey. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Says, I had a landlord, and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. She says, I had a landlord sue me for false damages for over a year after I left the premises. Yeah, sometimes that can happen as well. Maybe a judge won't see it your way, right? Maybe you did leave some damages. Maybe you didn't. Either way, the fact that you are being called to court is intimidating. And that is what post-separation abuse does. It intimidates you. Remember, it's all about power and control and the ability to reduce your autonomy and independence. And so that can happen even years after you move out of a premises, Ken Eisen, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome back. Glad to see you. Tiffany Edwards, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. Sammy D, hello and welcome. Good to see you. And welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you either. Adila, hello and welcome back. Sean Johnson, hello and welcome. Good to see you. All right, I'm looking for comments. Randy L says, since I cut ties, they are after pulling my kids away. Sometimes that happens too, right? You walk away from an abusive relationship, and the next thing you know, the kids, the dog, the birds, the animals, whatever, it's all a point of contention. Everything is a court issue. And it's like, I've seen those cases. I don't take them because they drain me to the core, but I've seen those cases and I'm like, oh my God, no, let me refer you to Dr. Johnson. Okay. This is not going to work. We're not going to make the birds outside a point of contention. And we're certainly not going to make that little Pomeranian dog, whatever you call it, a point of contention. I once, and this is why I don't do it anymore. I once counseled a couple who, they divorced. They seemed like they were very sensible, mature individuals. And it wasn't until the divorce was final that they started fighting over their parrot. Okay. Parrot. I said a parrot, I'm still like trying to let that sink in 4 or 5 years after this case. And I just, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, well, I want the parrot on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then he was like, well, I want to see him every Friday. And that was a point of contention for them. Therapists who are very skilled, we know that there's something else going on under the surface. It's not just about this parrot, but at face value, it's just so draining, Jessica J, good to see you back. Welcome. Jessica J says, it concerns me that my in-laws will do anything to stop us from moving out of state. We can't allow the fear of their actions intimidate us, yet the fear exists. Yeah. I don't know the dynamic there, but if I take what you're saying to me and to us, Jessica J, at face value, yeah, that's a difficult dynamic there for sure. And sometimes if you do decide to move out of state, move on, the post-separation abuse starts there. Why? Because you're probably going to get some phone calls. You're probably going to get some text messages or emails or social media posts that are insensitive and uncaring and abusive and domineering. And you may not be invited to the next party or holiday. So, it can go on that way for many years. Andrew Mercer, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. I think they are Apache earrings. You're right. Thanks for seeing that. A seat at the King's table with Tanisha. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. All right, two more comments and we're going to jump in. Charisma's Healing Journey says, walking away was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was necessary. Absolutely. I agree. And Murr, hello and welcome. I haven't seen you in a little while. Good to see you back. And Murr says, I have a brother who I'm trying to get away from, is close to a sibling I enjoy. She does pass information along, which I don't like. Well, I have to go no contact with her. I mean, it really just, I'm not going to say yes or no because I don't know all the details and the dynamics, but I do caution you. You don't want to just walk away because she shares information. You really want to determine, is the information that she's sharing, is it detrimental? Just because she shares information doesn't mean that it's information that's harmful, doesn't mean that it's information that's going to result in some negative consequence with me. It could be information as simple as, she's going to get married next year. Okay. I mean, that's really nothing. But if it's information like, she had a miscarriage, then that's something that you may want to look at and say, I'm done here, or I'm going to have a conversation with you. You know what I mean? So you really want to weigh the pros and the cons of that decision. That's a good question though. All right, guys, let's jump back in. What are the patterns when it comes to post-separation abuse? You step away, you walk away, you put up a barrier, a boundary, and here are, these individuals in your world, excuse me, really making life difficult on you. What's likely to happen? I've seen this in my practice, and I talked to some of my coworkers this past week about post-separation abuse in passing, and they have seen this as well, and the research supports this. The number one thing that's most likely going to happen if you finally put up that boundary or walk away is a lot of what I talked about yesterday, monitoring and tracking. That is just how it goes. If you're in a toxic situation before you walk away or before you put up a boundary, it may get even more toxic as you try to exit that situation. And so monitoring and tracking can happen through cell phones, social media posts, texting you, having your GPS system in your car, on your phone, all of that. The other thing is blaming and shaming. I'm going to blame you for walking away from this relationship. I'm going to blame you for getting out of this. I'm going to shame you by talking about you with other family members, by talking with your boss about what you did to our family, by talking to your friend about what you did to me. Shame and blame. High conflict communication is also something that happens in these dynamics, and it can continue after you walk away. A person who is abusive and intimidating and bullying, they're not going to just stop because you walk away. Now, some people, if they are mature, healthy, sensible, or they want peace of mind as well, they're going to say, you know what? They want to go. I'm going to go over here and live my life, and I'm going to move on. But if you're dealing with a narcissist, if you're dealing with a psychopath, if you're dealing with a paranoid personality, if you're dealing with somebody who has to be in control at all times, an abuser, then you want to keep in mind that if they were abusive within the relationship, they're likely going to still be abusive when you leave. That's not a ticket to stay, but that's a little bit of a caution that you need to maneuver out of that situation in a wise way. Guys, coercive control, somebody mentioned it earlier. I think it was Jill Alcock. I had to think about your screen name for a second. But I think it was you that said you've been through coercive control, and that could be systematic dominance. It could be, I'm going to go over there and file this legal case against you. And once you are served, I'm going to manipulate you until the court date. I'm going to ask you if I can do A, B, and C, and you better say yes, because if not, then I'm going to manipulate you, and I'm going to go to the court system, and I'm going to put you through these challenges, and I'm going to tell your boss A, B, and C, or I'm going to leak something within the family that you don't want me to, talk about. There's many different ways that they can use systematic dominance against you, coercive control. There's also sometimes what happens is mutual abuse, and you want to keep your eyes open for this if you haven't seen it. Really, what happens with quote unquote mutual abuse is the perpetrator or the person or the family member or the spouse, whatever, that you're trying to get away from because of how they abuse you. You may actually be pushed by them to start abusing them. How? Because you could start defending yourself, threatening, getting angry, and things getting blown out of proportion. And so there's kind of like this mutual abuse that happens. And what do you think that abusive person's going to go and say? That you are the abuser, and here's the evidence of that. I've seen that evil tactic in therapy, and I'm like, I can't, I'm usually thinking to myself, I can't imagine what that has to feel like. I'm trying to get away from you because you're totally unstable, and now you're pushing my buttons and I'm reacting, but my reaction to you are now twisting, and you're making it look like I'm the one who's abusive. So we call that mutual abuse. There's also this external, and research in psychology highlights this as well. There's this external misunderstanding with outsiders, this misunderstanding of what's going on in the relationship. Because let's say, for example, your narcissistic mom has been really hurtful to you for the past few years, and you had a terrible childhood with her. You've decided to walk away because now she's trying to control every decision that you are making. You don't feel free and independent because of her. Now you've walked away, and everybody on the outside of you, neighbors, friends, co-workers, the list goes on, they're now starting to look at you as the problem, because now you've put up a boundary and you've said, I don't want to be abused by you anymore. I don't want to feel like I can't live my own life. And so what can this abusive narcissistic mother do? Well, she can start talking about you and making it look like you're this oppositional, defiant, rebellious adult child who's in the wrong. But the reality is that you are being misunderstood by external forces. It looks one way, that it completely isn't. That's something that happens a lot. There's also lethality. Lastly, in this category, there's lethality and violence that can also happen. Family violence. Remember yesterday, I talked about family intimidation and bullying, and family members who bully and intimidate, they definitely will, if they haven't already, or they can, or sometimes feel it is necessary to threaten violence. And that's where things get way too serious, and it can really break you down. Let me also say, let me also add in here entrapment and imprisonment. That's another thing the research has highlighted is often a pattern within these dynamics. The other individual, the abusive person, long after you've gotten out of that situation or dynamic, they're still trying to entrap you and imprison you and just hold you hostage. And that can just be so painful, right? Research in psychology, let me give you a little bit of research. And I don't want you guys to take this as just being like, sexist or anything like this. But when you look up post-separation abuse, there's a lot of research that points to men as committing more crimes, injustices, causing more pain and heartache in post-separation abuse than women. I don't personally and professionally believe that that's a balanced way to look at that, because I've seen some women be just as abusive when it comes to post-separation abuse. And sometimes they're very indirect and passive aggressive. So it happens with them. But some of the research that I saw said men have the higher percentage of being the abuser in a post-separation situation than does women. There's also some research that says that just the simple fact that you've had let's say you've had a childhood that has been traumatic, that is often a risk factor, meaning it's a vulnerability, it's a sensitivity in your life. It's a risk factor for later going on to a relationship that's going to be the same way. So childhood trauma and separation and poor attachment, that is a risk factor or a trigger or a vulnerability in your world that can cause you to later get connected with somebody who put you through the same kind of pain and punishment. And lastly, before I go back to the chat box, there is also some research that highlights that being under resourced, so not having a lot of money, not having a vehicle, not having reliable means to get out of a family situation, a situation with your boss, whatever the case may be, being under resourced kind of prevents access. It prevents access to help. I'll put it that way. It prevents access to help. If you're in a home environment as an adult child and you can't move out because you can't afford rent, you're unemployed, maybe you're on disability, maybe you have a temporary disability. If you're under-resourced, it's going to be hard for you to say adios amigos, And so research suggests that that is why some people stay in the abusive situation, rather than walk away. Or they may walk away, right? Like you may walk away from your toxic family and you may feel so much abuse and heartache that you end up going back and saying, you know what, I'll just go back to the situation because either way, I'm going to be abused, All right, guys, let me go back to the chat box, take a little bit of a break, and we'll continue on. Lastly, in this conversation, I want to give you, of course, how this impacts you. So you're going to want to stick around for that. All right. Moon Turtle Warrior, I have this so backwards. Oh my God. Moon Warrior Turtle says, both my parents sabotaged my career and moved by changing the agreed upon amount I would pay for living with them. When I challenged them, they put me out. Oh boy. If I take that at face value and that's how it actually happened, that is the worst thing a parent could possibly do, right? Now, maybe there were some rules in there. Maybe they want you to be independent. Maybe they wanted you to pay what you didn't think you should pay. And they said, you know what? You got to get out of my house. Either way, I just think it's so cold, I don't think that's the way to manage that. Let me say that your case is an example of several cases that I've had in the past. And my suggestion in these kind of dynamics is that, number one, never make a verbal agreement. You want it in writing. So you can look at that person and say, here it is right here. Now you're going to argue against the paperwork. You want to sign something, even if it's your parents, have some proof in some way that you were paying some bills, you were getting mail at that address, you signed something, you had a written agreement. You know what I mean? We don't think of those things until it's gone wrong. But that may be helpful for you to keep in mind. Hopefully there won't be a next time. Thank you. Give it a think. Yeah. Aren't they super relatable? And there's a reason why thank you for telling me that. There's a reason why I give you all those examples. And sometimes I'll self disclose because you need to see that this is not just you. When my clients come to me, and they've come to me to see me for the first time, I notice that with them, if I tell them at the very first appointment that what they're experiencing is not abnormal, it is not something that I'm going to look at you and say, oh, how dare you? When they realize that, it's almost like they heal even in that moment. And so if there are super relatable examples, give it a think. It can be really healing. So I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Jeremy Melancon. I probably messed that up. I apologize. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you, and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. You said, how is that spelled, please? Is it mesosystem? Is that what you want? Is that the spelling that you want? MESOSYSTM, if that's the one that you're asking me for. That's probably it. Or is it something else? Let me know. I'll help if it's something else. Star, hello and welcome. Glad to see you back tonight. Star says, if ever there was a time to learn what boundaries are and how to use them, this is it. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Jeanette, good to see you. Welcome back into tonight's live chat. Trauma survival. Trauma survivor. Hello and welcome back. I feel like I'm seeing these messages constantly. You guys think, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like trauma survivor might be a troll, but I don't know. I can't figure that one out. Somebody tell me if you think that's the same thing too. Charisma's healing journey says passivity attracts predators. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. Yep, I agree. Ash Shakur Whitaker, hello and welcome back. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Half the battle knowing is says it's like a teeter-totter effect. Yeah. Yep. Very much agree. SH, I don't know if I welcomed you, but hello and welcome. SH says it's like a game of chess to them. Stay one step ahead. Someone said they don't compartment, but counterparent. I think they do that in many situations. You mean compartmentalize? Is that the word? I don't know if I understand that, but I will say it is like a chess game to them, 100%. Yes. Agree. Kaz, hello and welcome. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Kaz says, thank you so much for your information. Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. I hope it's helpful. Sammy, I haven't seen you in such a long time. Welcome back and thank you for that. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. FJ, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. And welcome to the channel. FJ says, trying to take control of your world is your basic narc sabotage, trying to control you through others. Well said. It's scary when you are still emotionally, spiritually, and or financially vulnerable. Absolutely. It's very scary. It's terrifying if you are psychologically, financially, and spiritually drained, and you've got this person who's abusing you after you've said, you know what, I'm done with you. It's like, what don't you understand? And for many of my clients, and this may relate to you guys, for many, may be relatable to you as well. For many of my clients, they often launch into this guilty mindset. I must have done something to cause this. That's usually what they say. I must have done something to trigger this. And when they say that, sometimes I just sit back and I'm like, you know, this is almost like a way to kind of explain away the abusive and toxic, dysfunctional thing that's happening here. And it's like this desperate plea to find an answer. It's like this desperate attempt to build some strength and control in their own lives, that they then begin to look at the abuser and say, you know what, I must have done something to cause this. I must have said something that triggered them, you know? And that kind of gives you a little bit of a false control of the situation. You know, maybe if I could just rack my brain and figure out what I did wrong, I can maybe fix this. And most of the time that's a defense mechanism and a desire for control and a change, a resolution in the situation, you know? But I very much agree. I very much agree. It's very scary. God is love. Thank you so much for the super chat tonight. I appreciate it always. I don't know if I welcomed you, so welcome. If I did welcome you, don't worry about the second welcome. I can't remember as well as I used to, guys. I don't know what it is. Kay Razy, hello. I think I said welcome to you earlier. Kay Razy says wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Yeah. There's like this greediness when it comes to post-separation abuse sometimes. And I don't want it to sound like I'm making this a light thing, but it's almost like the abuser says, you know what, I didn't do everything I wanted to do while they were near me, so I think I'm going to abuse them a little bit more after they've left me so that I can just kind of take full control here, you know? Okay. Ellie Wen, hello and welcome. Good to see you back in tonight's live chat. Ooh, is it Spenderella? That's so cute. Hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Spenderella says, why do people that bullied someone off of a job stalk once you finally leave? Well, because again, it depends on what's going on in their internal framework, right? Are they stalking you so they can feel powerful and in control? Are they bothering you because they want to reduce your autonomy and independence? Are they treating you a certain way because they don't like you, or they have a vendetta against you, or they're jealous, or whatever their problem is? Once they do that and bully you off the job, they're still not done, right? Because they still sometimes feel that need to have control. They also feel that need to make your life just pure HELL. You know, it's like being in the fiery place. You can't escape. You can't get out. And sometimes that makes the abuser feel even more powerful, you know? Consider the idea of stalking. Maybe I'll bring the psychology of stalking up at some point this year as well. But consider the ideology of stalking, depending on what category of stalker. You know, there's usually this desire for extreme dominance and power and control. And they don't just stop because they've been arrested. They don't just stop because you've told them, I don't want anything to do with you. They'll continue and they'll push the script and they'll bypass your boundaries, including the law's boundaries, because that's the kind of control and desire that just burns within them. You know, they want that full control. And so that might explain why if you leave a job, they're still, you know, becoming a big problem for you. That could explain some of that. Okay, bear with me, guys. I want to get a few more comments in, and then I'm going to tell you how this impacts you. What does research say is happening here? And I've seen it as well. Javier Romero, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome. Good to see you, and welcome. I don't remember seeing you before. Good to see you. Sammy D, yes, I thought you were a new subscriber. Welcome. It's so good to see you, and welcome to the channel. Kay Razy says the parental alienation is what? Heartbreaking? 100%. Yep, I agree. Miss L, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Miss L says, what about when you're co-parenting or dating and the other person lets their children openly disrespect you without saying anything to their children? Do you have a video on this? Thank you for posting. I do not. No. Maybe I can incorporate that into a video in the future. You know, it really depends on the dynamics, you know. Should his children or should her children disrespect you even though you are not their blood? Absolutely not. Like, they should be wonderful kids who respect you. However, you've got to respect them too. You've got to be loving. You've got to understand that before you, there was another woman. Before you, there was another family dynamic. And so that family dynamic that they have been raised under or been a part of many years prior to you could possibly be impacting that relationship now, right? All of that history could be impacting you and could be impacting how they see you, right? There could still be some unresolved resentment with them towards you for dating dad or wanting to marry dad, or, it doesn't minimize that they have to respect you. That's not what I mean. I don't want it to come across that way, but you have to understand, and we all have to understand, because we all may be in a position where we need somebody else's children to respect us. We have to be careful that we're being reciprocal. We have to show them love and affection, and we have to have proper boundaries too. I've seen step parents come into situations where I'm like, you don't have a say here, No, you should not have a say on that. Don't try to parent those other kids. They have a mother, or they have a father. So there's boundaries. I guess that's what I'm saying. That's a tough one, right? But they should respect you. They should never disrespect you. But if they do disrespect you, try to give them the benefit of the doubt and ask yourself, is this a dynamic that I've stepped into and I really need to learn how to navigate this better? I hope that was helpful. Okay. Mental Health Mermaid, hello and welcome back. Good to see you tonight. Earth Walking Dream Talking, hello and welcome back. Good to see you. Earth Walking Dream Talking says how to deal with the post-separation shame spiral from abusive parents. Yeah. Disengage. That's what I always tell my clients. You're my last one, so I can go back to the content. Disengage, If they're trying to take you through the process of shame and guilt and blame, I would disengage. I would take responsibility for what you have control over, right? Your own behaviors, how you treated them, what you said to them, maybe your attitude, maybe the people you've talked to about this situation. Take responsibility for your role, but at the same time, I would disengage from them. You shouldn't have to carry the burden on your shoulders that doesn't belong to you. You know what I mean? So I would disengage. Okay, guys, how does this impact you? Ready? How does this impact you? Well, you're coming out of a situation with an abusive person, relationship partner, marriage partner, boss, friend, family system. The first way that this can impact you in a negative sense is exploitation of all systems. Here's what I mean by that. You leave out of a very intimidating, harmful situation where there is a lot of chaos. Exploitation can happen with your job. That's a system. That person can reach out and start talking to people on your job, can start spreading rumors, could even contact your boss and leave a message, an email, a phone call, a voicemail. I've seen that with my clients in the past. So that's one system. Another system is the legal system. They can drag you through the court system for child custody, for domestic violence, for small petty things like you didn't finish paying the mortgage, or you had your rent that was late, or whatever. So that's another system. The other system could be the family system. So they could go all throughout your family and spread things that are not true, make you look a certain way. There is also the system of the church system, the religious system, right? They can go to your church and start spreading rumors, and the list goes on. So exploitation of all systems in your life. That is one major way that psychology highlights these people kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of grab you with their claws and they won't let go. And they just impact all the systems in your life through exploitation. It's really emotional blackmail too sometimes. That's the second way that this can impact you. You can start becoming the victim of emotional blackmail, that I'm going to hold this secret for you until you walk away from me, and then all bets are off, I've had evil, narcissistic clients in the past say things like that to me about somebody else in their life. One client that I'd been seeing for 3 years back in 2020, She came to me, had narcissistic personality disorder. I knew it from day one, didn't diagnose it until I really started seeing the symptoms. But the narcissistic personality in this person was astounding. She came across for the first year in therapy as so loving and so sensible and mature. But the second year of therapy changed. Why? Life situations, death and loss in her life, grief. Her husband divorced her, the list goes on. So she kind of shifted with all of that as well. So she couldn't fake anymore. So I started seeing her true colors. What I noticed is she said to me during a session, she says, Tamara, I told my husband that I am so disappointed that he would want to divorce me that I'm going to tell his parents and his family a secret that he told me in confidence because I want him to suffer like I'm suffering. I don't want this divorce, she says to me. And she says, because of that, and you can't stop me, Tamara, so don't even try. That's what she said to me. Don't even try. She says, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to do this. I've already made up my mind. She says, I'm going to share this secret with his mother, his father, and his family, so they will know the kind of person that he is. And I explained to her over the course of several sessions, that is emotional blackmail. I'm not going to hurt you if you do things my way. If you don't do things my way, I'm going to hurt you. That's emotional blackmail. The other thing is there's often a breakdown in courage. There's often a breakdown in courage and courage to defeat that enemy that's in your world or, make that next move without their quote unquote permission. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm blanking for a little bit there, but there's often this reduction in courage, right? There's this breakdown in the ability to feel that you can stand up and you can get out of this very toxic dynamic. There may also be court mandated arrangements with these kind of individuals, and they know how to move your life around based on the law. I once had a client, he came to me with his children. As soon as the divorce was final, his ex-wife drug him. I'm going to say it that way, drug him through the court system, and everything in his world was court mandated. You're only allowed to see your kids on this day. You can only take your kids out of state that month or that week. Visitation is going to happen on this holiday. Everything in his life was court mandated. There were court mandated arrangements, and that can happen to you as well. There's also the separation cycle that you may find yourself becoming vulnerable to. You're still involved, and then you jump out of the situation. You may text them for something and they text you back. You may email them for something, they email you back. And it's kind of like this back and forth, right? You're out and then you're back in. You're out again and then you're back in. And that separation cycle can keep you in an abusive dynamic, right? Think of the cycle of abuse. Sometimes it calms down and things look good, and it goes right back to being traumatic all over again, Post-separation economic abuse is something that can happen to you. Maybe you have moved out, but that person has stopped paying your car insurance, stopped helping you with your car note. They have told you they're going to tell the landlord that you're not on the lease so you can get kicked out. Like, there's a lot of legal, financial, and economic abuse that happens when post-separation abuse is occurring. That's really the only way somebody can maintain control over you, and they know it's going to work, right? Because we have to have money to survive. We have to have economic stability. So these kind of abusive family members, relationships, they know that if they target your economic stability, they've got you. You know what I mean? The other thing too here is fearful obedience. You're likely to experience fearful obedience and the development of dependent personality disorder. You can experience, one more time, this fearful obedience, and you may develop dependent personality, right? Have you ever seen a family member say, if you walk out that door, you're not going to be able to come back? Have you ever had a parent say to you, if you talk to me like that again, I'm done with you? And they meant it. And so what do? You kind of sink under that pressure, and you obey, in quotation marks, you obey out of fear. and you become dependent and you say, you know what, I'm going to just give you everything that you want from me so I don't have to be alone, so that I don't have to be bullied, you know? This is a lot, guys. I'm going to pause here because we've had so much information. I feel like I'm just giving you a whole, like, you know, smorgasbord of information. I don't want to overwhelm you. So let's pause here. This is tough, right, guys? It's really manipulative. And let me throw up some terms for you briefly before I go back to the chat box. You want to consider the sociopaths and psychopaths utilize this tool, post-separation abuse. Narcissists also use this. The covert narcissist, according to research, is the most, what's the word I'm looking for? These are the individuals who use post-separation abuse the most because all of their behaviors tend to be covert, under the surface, hidden, right? So they utilize post-separation abuse a lot to hurt people. And lastly, the character that utilizes post-separation abuse would be those individuals who have unresolved, intense, and ferocious anger. And sometimes individuals who have bipolar disorder and a substance abuse problem can also launch into an attack against you and create that post-separation abuse. Okay, guys, let me go to the chat box. And we're going to wrap up. Sammy D says, I'm so glad I don't bother with social media, just YouTube. Yeah. You really should limit your social media with these people. Love Logic, hello and welcome. I feel like I haven't seen you in so long, so welcome back. Love Logic says, hello, Tam in chat. I'm grappling with the post-separation abuse. My mother using my now 16-year-old as a means of control. Feel like I'm grieving my child who now sneaks since parental alienation. I don't know what that word means, and it could just be me. But I do remember, Love Logic, you mentioning your 16-year-old, the parental alienation that's happening there. I totally get that. Yeah, that's a difficult dynamic. It is. I'm sorry you're still going through that. Okay. Nancy R, hello. Let me get a sip of water, guys. Hold on. Excuse me. Nancy R, I don't know if I welcomed you tonight, so hello and welcome. Good to see you. Nancy R says, I know these are difficult conversations, but I so appreciate all you do for us, Tamara. That's awesome, and you're welcome, and thank you for just being wonderful on the channel. It wouldn't be this way without you guys. I'll put it that way. Javier Romero says, my partner and I come from families that are homophobic. Sadly, keeping distance seems to be the only solution for our health. Sometimes their controlling actions are just their homophobia in disguise. Maybe so. They have expectations and maybe boundaries and political beliefs, and the list goes on. And it really does make the dynamic a very rocky one. Yes. Gennaro Natali, I probably messed that up. I'm so sorry. Welcome. Good to see you, and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. You know, I don't want to add that up there, so I'm going to actually go back to, and I will make a report on that one for safety. Miss L says, I disconnected and use logic in a mature way. It still hurts me. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. K Razy, I see your message on here. Yeah. I'm not sure what I think of G or Gennaro. I love the fact that you guys are jumping on that. But I wonder if it's just kind of like a way to gain attention and control. I don't know. But I love that you guys are sticking there to provide some support. Kim Math, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I feel like I always say it wrong. Welcome to tonight's live chat. We're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Kim Math says, I just jumped on. We'll have to listen tomorrow. Happy New Year, everyone. I listened to yesterday's video twice. Well, thank you for that. I love that. It really does help the channel, but it's like you do have to listen to it twice, right? Happy New Year to you as well. All right, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to get a couple of you before we sign off. Christina LZ, hello and welcome back. You're welcome, and thank you so much for that. I'm glad this is helpful. Yeah. You guys are wonderful. You're running to support that commenter. Truly, truly hope that they are not just attention seeking or trolling, because that would be awful. It shows more of what the issue is there than it does with you guys. You guys are wonderful, and I definitely see that. Is it Anne-Marie or Mari G? Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and welcome to the channel. Good to see you. Citizen King, hello and welcome. I haven't seen you in a while, my friend. Good to see you. Citizen King says, when I went no contact, no supply to disregard, there was no one left to disregard. And that emboldened me to reject any more abuse from anyone. Yeah, sometimes that can happen. You say goodbye to them, you don't want to deal with anybody's abuse, right? Jeremy Robinson, hello and welcome back tonight. Jeremy Robinson says, I have seen women be just as abusive as men, as well as the low number. Oh, as well. Period. The low numbers could be because men are less likely to report the abuse than women are. Well, the low numbers is really just more of stigma, you know, that men are the constant perpetrators of abuse. That's really what the research is showing us. But the issue is this: most women tend to be indirect, passive aggressive, and they have different ways that they cause the post-separation abuse. So there's a lot in there that's wrong. Okay. Guys, I'm just trying to say hello to some of you, and then we're going to sign off. Skywalker, woo, that's hard. Shaden Freud, hello and welcome. Good to see you, and welcome to the channel. Yeah, absolutely. She says, I don't regret this lesson. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anybody else that I have missed? Orlando, you did not just say that. Orlando said every video confirms I'm certified normal. Orlando, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. I'm just going to leave it at that. Sorara, hello, welcome. Good to see you. Yes, I'm so sorry for that. I feel like you're always having internet issues. I'm sorry. Hopefully you can do the replays, you know, but it's always good to see you in the chat box. Okay, I think I got everyone. Momtude, oceans of blessings to you as well. I still love that. It's always so cute to see you on my channel. Thank you for that positivity. Betsy, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for that. You're right. It is so much more common than we think. Thank you for saying that. I agree. I agree. Okay, scanning one more time. I think we are good, guys. I'm going to say, Miss L, you're our last one. You say, stay strong, people. Yes. Yes. Because even if you are in a situation where there's post-separation abuse, if you can just maintain that strong stance, you can overcome that. Thank you so much for being with me tonight, guys. And for being so supportive in the chat box, not only towards me, but towards everybody else. I truly appreciate every last one of you on the channel. You're not just a number. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you really soon. Bye-bye.